My name is Hachiyanagi. I've taught here at Mount Holyoke for 5 years. Students are making paper from plant fibers, both in Western and traditional Eastern style.
That was beloved professor and current chair of the Mount Holyoke Art Studio in a 2009 video demonstrating the serene art of papermaking.
I believe we have both counsel. I also see Ms. Hachiyanagi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Your Honor.
This is Professor Hachiyanagi, appearing equally as serene, but at a court hearing as an inmate in the Franklin County House of Corrections in Massachusetts.
Under no circumstances should this person be released.
And now she's being held without bond after being charged in a violent, bizarre crime.
It was a horrifying attack that takes place without a clear motive. That's absolutely dangerous.
According to the arrest report, on Christmas Eve of 2019, Hachiyanagi called 911 from the home of a fellow Mount Holyoke professor, a longtime friend of hers. She stated that she found her friend lying on the floor of the residence, barely breathing, semi-conscious, and with a head injury. The officer who responded to the call found the victim and Miss Hachiyanagi lying together on the floor. Hachiyanagi told the trooper that there were signs of a struggle in the house. The victim told the trooper that she did not know the gender or any other identifying descriptions for the alleged suspect. But that story began to unravel when hours later at the hospital, the victim told police that Professor Hachiyanagi was the one who attacked her.
The defendant, who was at the time a friend of the victim, comes to the house, uses a pretense to get into the house, and then attacks her upon entry with anything that she can find. She beats her in the head with a rock. She attacks her and punctures her face with garden scissors. She beats her with a poker.
The victim told police that Professor Hachiyanagi had shown up on the deck of her residence and told the victim that she really missed her and wanted to talk with her about feelings. Once Professor Hachiyanagi was inside, according to the victim, she began hitting her repeatedly in the head. In a statement to police, the victim says Hachiyanagi told her the attack was because Hachiyanagi had loved her for many years and that she should have known. Professor Hachiyanagi is now facing 6 charges, including assault with intent to kill.
The motive that I love you, therefore I have to kill you doesn't make sense, and it continues to not make sense.
That was the first question when the defendant was attacking the victim and the victim rolled over onto her back. Was the victim looked at the defendant and said, "Why?"
The victim told police that during the attack she thought she was going to die, and she says she survived by playing along with Miss Hachiyanagi and convincing her to call 911 for help. Professor Hachiyanagi has pled not guilty to the attack. Her lawyer says his client is not a violent person and should be released on bond.
Every witness, including Professor who was interviewed with regard to Professor Hachiyanagi having or not having violent propensities prior to this one night, was no.
The state's attorney says the professor is accused of a very violent attack.
The allegation is that the defendant did this. There's no doubt that the victim's orbital bones were broken. There's no doubt that the victim received multiple stitches to try and put her face back together. The punctures to the victim's, to the tissue surrounding the victim's eyes from the gardening scissors are horrifying.
The judge denied bond. Professor Hachiyanagi will remain in custody pending the outcome of trial. She has pled not guilty and maintains her innocence.
Really a strange case. Let's bring in CourtTV anchor Ted Rollins. Ted, there was a hearing today, and one of the first things that came up may shed some light on what may have happened here. And we're talking about another allegation that she was obsessed or harassing someone else?
Yeah, another staff faculty member at the college. There's a bit of a bombshell today. The prosecution said, hey, we didn't know about this originally when the original charging document was drafted, but we think this is pertinent information that we've now talked to someone else who says that they weren't physically harmed, but they were harassed. And there seemed to be this fatal attraction scenario going on. The defense says, come on, this is ridiculous. This is a fishing expedition. Take a listen.
The Commonwealth, after indictment, had been made aware of another allegation a few years prior. A former colleague of the defendants was subject to what she describes as harassment on the part of the defendant. And speaking with counsel for the college, the counsel affirmed that this kind of antagonism was present, but wasn't really able to go into detail and wasn't able to turn over the records of documenting that without a subpoena.
If I understand what it is that the Commonwealth is looking for, it seems extremely broad, if not overbroad. It looks like they're looking for her entire personnel file or any discipline with other professors or people at Mount Holyoke College. I also noticed that it seems to be an unnamed person without a very specific date or situation that they are looking for. We don't know when this supposedly happened. The Commonwealth's motive so far has been unrequited love. My client is held without the right to bail based in part on that being put forward.
So, Vinny, obviously a little vague there on the details of this other allegation. The Commonwealth really just wants more information. They've gotten wind of it, and they want more information on this, and they want it introduced. The judge says they'll take it under advisement and make a ruling soon.
Okay, so as we noticed, everything was done via Zoom. It's happening like that across the country. They haven't resumed in-person trials yet, and how is the defense attorney preparing for trial under all these limitations?
Well, the defense attorney says that he hasn't been able to have a non-recorded conversation with his client for months. And for that reason, he's nowhere near prepared. The judge says, well, you know what? Neither is the Commonwealth. We're not doing trials right now, so don't worry about it. Let's just reconvene in a few months, have another status conference. Bottom line is this is not going to trial until at least likely this summer, maybe even the fall.
Yeah, I know historically Massachusetts is kind of slow to begin with, and now with this, I wouldn't put any bets on when this thing's happening. So what is happening next in the case?
It's just going to be a status conference in March, and this will take place, to see where everybody is, and more importantly, where the system is, where the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is in terms of having trials, and they'll all get together in presumably another Zoom call. It's March 16th, pretrial conference. After that, there should have been a ruling from the judge by then on this other information, so that will likely also be litigated at that conference, and along with a trial date being set.
All right, we will keep track of it here at CourtTV, of course. Ted Rollins,
it's a fascinating case.
Yeah, it really is, and you got to hear the testimony. I mean, the victim's going to have to testify in this one to explain what happened that night, and we'll see how it all turns out. Ted Rollins, appreciate it.
You bet.